Welcome to another session of monitoring Azure Data Factory pipeline. In the last session, we get started with monitoring our Azure Data Factory pipeline. We created a bunch of alerts, and when one of our pipeline failed or succeeded, we got an alert after some time. It's going to take a couple of minutes, and after the pipeline was successful, you can see that a successful pipeline was triggered for the Code Red demo data factory. If you look, there's going to be a bunch of information, rule ID and resource ID. Rule ID is going to take you to the rule which what you've created, and resource ID going to take you to the Azure Data Factory resource. So that's going to be your Azure Data Factory resource, and that's going to be your the rule which we have created. That's what we have created. You're obviously incurred a monthly triggered cost for every triggers you receive, so you want to be mindful about what you want to trigger and what you don't want to. You get some other information as well in terms of metric information, what are the namespaces, what dimension you created, and the time aggregation which you set up, and the threshold which you have. In this session, we're going to get started with the monitoring of your diagnosis and metrics. So Azure Data Factory has a lot of moving parts, a lot of tasks, activities, debugs, pipelines, and a lot of templating. So you want to make sure that you have a granular understanding of what's happening inside your Azure Data Factory. It helps you to avoid potential problem and troubleshoot any past audit trails. You can use monitoring data to gain deep insights about your application, which will help you to improve performance and maintainability, and the stay in line with your SRE fundamentals. You want to make sure that you are staying top of your metrics as always. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to in order to configure the diagnosis of your Azure monitor. So you want to see what type of logs are being generated, how many pipelines were triggered, how many of them were failed. So not only alerts are fine, but you also want to have a holistic view. You also want to have a diagnosis of your data factory pipelines and all the triggers you run. Plus, one of the reason you want to enable diagnosis, Data Factory only stores your pipeline run data for 45 days. So all of you, what you see is over here gonna disappear after anything older than 45 days is gonna disappear. So if you want to keep or maintain your audit trails, what has been done beyond 45 days, if somebody wants to see that who has done what type of triggers in past, you could do it using Azure Diagnosis as well. So what you could do is you could go to your Azure. So we're going to utilize the same monitoring functionality which we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to first go to the monitor section, and if you see over here, you've something called as diagnostic setting under your settings. Once you click over here, you can select for which resource you want to enable the diagnosis. I've already enabled it. However, for the demo, we're going to understand how you could just enable so if you're setting up for the first time, you're going to have an option of turn on the diagnostics. I've already turned that on. So what I could do is I just gonna recreate it, and what I could do is I'm gonna select all of them. So I could just select whatever data, whatever loggings I want to. So you select various log relevant to your workspaces. So what I want to log is activity runs, pipeline runs. I want to make sure whatever triggers are run. If you don't have any SSIS package, if you don't have any sandbox pipeline runs, you just can skip it. We don't have any of the SSIS package, so we're gonna skip that. And if you select all metrics, various Azure Data Factory metrics will be made available for us to monitor or raise alerts upon, including the metrics for Data Factory, pipelines, trigger runs, as well as the SSIS IR run operations and execution as well. Now once you've selected, you can give it a name, that Data Factory diagnosis, and now you could select where you want to send it, whether it's gonna be a log analytics, a storage account, an event hub, or a third-party solution. For this demo, we're going to select an Azure workspace. So I already have a workspace created. So if you don't know how to create a workspace, you could go to the Azure portal, and once you get into the Azure portal, you can simply type in log analytics workspace, and it's going to be pretty easy to create. So I have already got it created. So once you have your pipeline saved right over here, yeah, just hit the save button. Once it is saved, what you need to now is, once your log analytics workspace is created and you have enabled your diagnosis, what you could do is you could just go to marketplace, and what you could do is now you could just type in Azure Data Factory. So this is a marketplace application. A solution provides you summary of all the health of your data factory, with options to drill into details and troubleshoot unexpected behavior patterns with rich out-of-box views, which generally would take months to create if you were to do it manually using the GUI. So at a glance, you could just get a summary of your data factory pipeline. So you could just see over here, if you see the screenshot, that you get a summary of your data factory pipeline, activities, trigger runs, ability to drill into data factory activity by type, summary of data factory top alerts, top errors, whatever you have received. So all of these which we're going to see. Now once we have done that, I am going to come over here, click on create, select the resource group where you want to put your solution, and now that workspace is going to come handy. So if you just create the workspace, it says that it's already installed. Now you could just review and create. There's nothing to review, just go ahead and create it. Now if you go to your Azure resource group, I'm gonna go to my resource group, and now if you see, there's something called as solution and workspace. So I'm going to go to my solution, and there's something called as workbook. Now you can, as soon as you click on the workbook, it's gonna give you the visual representation, all of your preceding metrics. So if you see, it's gonna say that pipeline runs by data factory. So by default it gives you 10 different views. Pipeline runs by data factory, activity runs by data factory, trigger runs by data factory, top 10 pipeline errors, trigger runs by data factory. And so there are a bunch of different by default metrics which gives you. So it gives you that number of time I have my pipeline being run. So you could just see all the details over here, how many times it was run, how many times it was failed, successful, why it was queued. So you could just get an activity run by data factory as well. And the interesting part is everything is being emitted over here except the debugging. So if you're just using a debugging option, that won't be emitted over here. Apart from that, SSIS packages, executions, pipeline runs, trigger runs, activity runs, all of them would be available right over here. Also, if you just click over the icon right over here, you could just get a granular information about the query which you could just build, and you could see that whatever you were visually watching it over there are actually triggered by using the query. So you could just edit the query, and instead of in progress, you can say what are the failed activities, give me a by count or by resources, and you could just create alert on basis on these resources as well. That's how easy it is to set up these resources. It's going to automatically set up all these resources for us. So if we come back over here, it's going to give you some of the other information as well. Top 10 pipeline errors. Specifically, I just for the sake of demo, I created bunch of pipelines with errors, and that's why it's giving you number of errors by pipeline. So you could get a more granular information that how many of them were filters, how many of them were get metadata for each, and all of these information, and for which resources you've created. The best part is, if you have multiple Azure Data Factory running, you could just send all of those logs right into single workspace, send it to Databricks or Spark notebooks, and visualize it and get more rich analytics for your data factory as well. Alright, this was about the diagnosis. I hope this was informative and you'll be able to get the best out of it when it comes to monitoring and diagnosis. I hope this was informative. Thank you.